and welcome to this lesson in American government, my Pontiac High School students. Today we are looking at the election itself. We've got some assignments coming up where this one might be useful to go back to and use as a resource, so pay close attention this first time and come on back another time. All right. So at the center of our lesson today is the idea of this electoral college, which you've probably heard a thing or two about if you've ever turned on the news in the last month and a half. The electoral college is what picks the president. But it has changed, and it's changed pretty significantly since our nation was founded. Once upon a time, the electors were just this group of wise individuals, and you have them cast their votes. They use kind of their own judgment, although they're also kind of using the judgment of their own state legislatures when voting for president. They pick the person they think, this small group of people, that they think will be the best president. However, today, electors are mostly expected to follow the will of the people. The people vote a certain way. The electors are supposed to vote a certain way. There's some complexities to that we'll get into in a moment. Now, counting electoral votes. The Electoral College votes about a month after the presidential election. So on November 8th, 2016, there was a presidential election, and then about a month later in mid-December, the Electoral College formally cast their votes, and they did so for President-elect Donald Trump. Now, the results are nearly always known before they vote, right? Like, the fact that President Trump became president when the Electoral College voted was not a surprise to anybody. But after the electors vote, in each of these state capitals, the electors show up, they go to a state capital. People went to Lansing here in Michigan. They cast their vote for president. The results are mailed to the U.S. Senate, where the vice president will read them and confirm those results. That is the current sitting vice president. That would be Joe Biden, will read the results of the Electoral College, confirm those results, and we will know for sure that Donald Trump is going to be the president. This has already happened. Okay, so this Electoral College system, it's got some flaws. There's some things that people don't like about it. It has been used in every one of our, it says 56 presidential elections here, but we have now had 58. Again, using some old lectures here, 58 presidential elections that we've had. A system has usually worked well. However, there are three significant defects into the system. Three ways that the system does not work all that well that Americans kind of have a problem with sometimes. Defect number one, because most states' elections are winner-take-all for electoral votes. There are only two, Nebraska and Maine, that are not winner-take-all. It's possible to win the popular vote, but lose the election. That is, you could win the states that you won and win them really big, and then lose a few states by a small margin. But it's all winner take all. So somebody with fewer popular votes can win the election. This happened in 2016 with Donald Trump. Additionally, we have the overrepresentation of small states in the Electoral College has helped to create this problem as well. Small states get all states get two extra electoral votes just because there's a state, and the rest are based upon population. They're proportional. But those two extra give the smaller states more weight than they would otherwise have. So the Wyomings and Rhode Islands and Montanas of the United States get a disproportionately high electoral vote based upon their population. Second defect, nothing in the Constitution or in federal law says that an elector, one of these people casting an electoral college vote, must vote for the candidate that the people of their state have selected. Okay? Nothing in law says that they have to. Some state laws have put that in place, but nothing in federal law or the Constitution. 8 years ago when I wrote this, we had 9 cases of faithless electors. That is 9 times where an elector was supposed to vote for one candidate, and they voted for another. That number is now swollen quite a bit. In this most recent election, 2016, there were 8 faithless electors in this election alone. Several who were supposed to vote for Trump who did not, more who were supposed to vote for Clinton and did not. So states can and do, in some cases, punish these faithless electors, but they've never actually impacted the result. It's never been the case that we should have had one president, but another got in because of a faithless elector. It's never happened. Third defect. If no one wins an electoral majority, the U.S. House of Representatives has to hold a vote to determine the result. This would only happen if you have 3 candidates who all won electoral votes. Because it's basically, if you get 50% plus 1 of the electoral college votes, that is, you got a majority, you win. And if there's only 2 people getting electoral votes, somebody's going to get that, unless there's a tie, which is very unlikely. Usually, it would be a third-party candidate that came in and interfered with this. This is a vote that is state by state, not based upon individual representatives. So, when the House of Representatives votes, Rhode Island, little itty-bitty Rhode Island, and California, big, huge California, have an equal vote, which is not democratic and is not representative at all. It's a state-by-state vote. Now, that hasn't happened very much, but that one has happened in American history. Not in a long time. All right. So ideas are out there to reform the Electoral College. How can we fix this system? Because these flaws have been known. They've been known for a long time. People have been arguing about them ever since the beginning. Amendments to the Constitution, because this is how you would have to do it. You can't do it with a law. You'd have to do it with an amendment. And amendments to the Constitution have been introduced since our very first term of Congress, 1789. We barely have a Constitution, and we're already proposing to change this aspect of it. But nothing has ever been successful. The Electoral College exists as the framers saw it, which, by the way, is basically because they didn't trust the American population and because they wanted to maintain this federalism balance between population and statehood. It goes back to the Great Compromise. If you can't remember that, go back to Unit 1. All right, a district plan. The district plan is the idea the electors from the Electoral College would be selected using the same method. Okay, it's winner take all. You win a district, you get all the votes for it, which would be 1. But it's more democratic because it fragments the vote a little bit better. Instead of there being 50 states, there are 435 districts. So the idea is that the Electoral College vote would more closely match the popular vote if you did it this way. I should say 51 because DC does get a vote as well. There's obviously a problem with this system. Gerrymandering has created districts which are themselves not very representative of the population as a whole. But this would be, despite this flaw, probably a little bit more democratic. Or if you get gerrymandering really bad, it could potentially be worse. All right, a proportional plan. This is what Nebraska and Maine already do. Here it says any candidate who receives a specific percentage of the popular vote in the state would receive the matching percentage of that state's electoral college votes. So here in Michigan, where we have 14 electoral college votes, but 12 of those are based upon population, we would divide up those 12. So if you won 40% of the popular vote in Michigan, you would get, let's say, 5 of those initial 12 electoral college votes, and then the bonus 2 for statehood would go to the winner. So somebody who got 40% would get 5 electoral college votes, and somebody who got the remaining 60% would get, what is that? That's 9 votes for themselves. So they would still clearly win, but the person who lost the state but still got a lot of votes would get some representation in the Electoral College for that. All right, direct popular election. Here we just count the votes of every citizen. The candidate with the most votes wins, period. That's it. If you get the most votes, you win. No Electoral College, no House of Representatives, none of that. Straightforward American vote. Now, the flaws here and the concern are the likelihood of fraud. You just have ballot stuffing in certain states, certain districts, really incentivizes that. Or it just makes it more difficult to challenge the electoral results because a recount in this case would be a recount of the entire country, which is huge and expensive. All right. So defending the electoral college system, I've always put this argument out here that the electoral college isn't always as bad as we think that it might be. The electoral college system has worked and mostly worked well for over 200 years, 230 plus years, where we've had this system. Again, at the time I wrote this, it was 4 of the nation's 56 elections. It is now 5 of the nation's 58 elections have not reflected the will of the people. But 5 out of 58, we're still talking about over 90% of the elections aligning with the popular will, which is not too bad for a democracy if we compare ourselves to other democracies globally. It might be imperfect, but it works well most of the time, and we have no idea what any of these other systems might do. They might work better, they might be significantly worse. So we've always stuck with the electoral college system. Of course, in our most recent system, we had the largest gap between electoral college votes and popular vote in American history by a significant margin. So that is causing me, and it should cause you, to rethink that a little bit. But that is how our system works and has worked. If we want to change it, well, there are a few ideas up there, or you could come up with some ideas of your own. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something, and farewell.